the topic, the topic can be further, discussed. But this is my contribution in terms of looking at buttressing what has already been, you know, spoken about, but looking at the conference per se, in the sense that the next revolution to me is that exactly what the previous speaker has said, in the sense that we are looking at multidisciplinarity in a very complex world, and we are looking at the tools that that can help us to understand, challenges, to understand phenomena. Hence, my topic here is the next research revolution, multidisciplinary science for a complex world, where, yes, we agree, as the previous speaker referred to different generations, the older people learning, but still, focusing on other areas, non-essential areas of technology, which can only point to the fact that the world changed faster. It is indeed changing faster, and in our disciplines as well. I think the COVID-19 pandemic showed us how behind people and governments were, climate change, and now it's AI, inequality, and the forces shaping this century. They didn't announce their arrival politely. So it was like one department at a time. So if we could look at the academic side of things, the research side of things, we see a transition from single author papers being dominant, in the 50s. And in the 2000s, you see that now there is co-authorship that is being promoted. These networks, co-authorship networks emerge, and you also have labs, across continents now collaborating. And then if you look at the current situation, what is the pertaining situation now is that these disciplines are blurring, if not, they have already blurred. Why? Because the problems do not wait. So you see that research therefore becomes a living, a live network. Therefore, we see that we have to be in a position to adapt, because the problems are ignoring departments. Problems actually ignore departments, and that is the tension. So, for example, a virus, biologically speaking, behavior, human behavior, economics, ethics, logistics, and policy all arrive at the same instant. I mean, I keep referring to COVID-19 because there you could see all those factors at play. Human behavior, using mask, resistance to the use of mask, limiting traveling, all these things, were with us at the same instant. So we have a single problem, but this problem transcends many doors. We have the pathogen, that is in biology, but we have human response as a behavior. How did the people respond? How did governments respond? How did ministries of health respond? And how did the general populace respond? You have the economy where we were, we are looking at livelihoods to say, okay, now we have this virus. Can we go to work or can we work online? You know, what is the impact on livelihoods? Ethics, as in who decides who does not travel, who decides who does not go to work, who decides who doesn't get paid based on that. So the logistics also came into play. The delivery of drugs, of vaccines, who supplies the vaccines, at what costs, and what is the law? What does the law say in terms of policy? So you can see that this problem does not knock on one door, but it walked through uh, all of them at the same time, at once. So what are we building towards here? We are building towards the fact that complex problems will need complex thinking, so from linear thinking to layered, from isolated to interwoven. So you can see that a pandemic, for example, is not solved by virology alone. A city cannot be engineered by civil engineers alone. And an algorithm is not safe in the hands of computer scientists alone, as the previous speaker referred to scary, scenarios of duplicates of doctors and the military, the invasions, etc. So that just shows you that an algorithm might not be safe after all in the hands of computer scientists alone. So, looking at the transition to multidisciplinarity, the transition to collaboration, we can say that, well, traditional research has its strengths and limits, right? Well, it gave us depth. Yes, traditional research gave us depth where there were rigorous methods, refined over centuries, qualitative, quantitative, mixed methods, specialized vocabularies, keywords, terms, key terms, shades, standards, how the IMRAD format, deep expertise and mastery of detail. But this is cumulative knowledge, century after century, that we have received from traditional research. This is how it has evolved. But then what this traditional research cannot give us or couldn't give us is the breadth, for example, where we still have silos that mistake walls for foundations, right? Languages that do not translate across fields. We still want to keep this language within our field, which contributes to the maintenance of these silos. Then incentives that reward narrow narratives over necessary ones. So the problems also that fall between these disciplines cannot be resolved easily because of the silo, approach. So just a moment, take a moment, breathe, take just a moment to reflect. What barrier most often prevents meaningful collaboration across disciplines? In your view, internally, just hold the question, sit with it. What barrier most often prevents meaningful collaboration across disciplines? Is it language? Is it incentives that, there are no incentives for collaboration across disciplines? Is it a question of time, trust, or ourselves? It's just, this is just a thought. It's just a thought which I would like you to hold the question and sit with it. Okay. We should find answers to this reflection question. But the tension now has been sort of characterized, and now we would like to look at what is the outcome of understanding this tension, which is a new shape of science that has emerged, where multidisciplinary science stops being a slogan. It is a structural response to problems that refuse categories. Multidisciplinary, fields can work in parallel, sharing a problem, but their methods. Interdisciplinary, yes, methods are blended now. Vocabularies translate from one field into the other. New joint frameworks can emerge. Then we can look at transdisciplinary as well, which is relatively new, fused with society, citizens, common people, ethics, and action. That is important. So it is up to us to transcend, to evolve towards involving society, to involve citizens, to involve ethics, and action. Action in addressing the challenges, the common challenges that citizens have. So let's look at a case study. One, for example, in the pandemic science, where a vaccine arrived in 11 months, not because virology moved faster, no, but because 8 disciplines moved together. In public health, logistics from genomics, data science, behavioral, how to manage, manufacturing, supply, communications. That was just an indication of who showed up in this room. So not one of these could have done this alone. Impossible. But here we are. We were vaccinated. The pandemic was managed. Of course, there could be even more, players. But that just shows you that we have had lessons, and sometimes very painful lessons that led us to understanding that we need to look at this collaboration. We can look at a second situation, precision healthcare, where we are saying this is the care that fits the patient, not on average. This precision healthcare only exists when biology, computation, and clinical wisdom share the same table. So that means you have genomics, where you are looking at DNA, AI models, looking at patterns, your patterns, and ethics, your consent. These three, when combined, they will give us care that fits the patient. So it's not silos anymore, but a fusion in which medicine becomes a conversation between many sciences. That's not to say that this is not happening right now, but it's good for us to talk about it so that we can bring it to our level, to our scale, to look at what can be done within, our sphere of influence to mimic the big things that other people are doing. We can also see smart cities, where we know that a city is not a software product, it is millions of lives who are negotiating with infrastructure. Yeah? Engineers build the grid, they build sensors, they allow mobility. I've seen so many people at traffic lights, technicians at traffic lights, and I've always wondered how is this achievable in big cities? You have sociologists, on the other hand, who will always ask whom the city actually serves. You have climate scientists that test if the city can survive 2050, that is the future. So citizens will also decide if the city is worth living in. So no single field here has the right to design a city alone. That means different disciplines must sit at the same table and come up with a city. So yes, research is becoming a network, and this is a big possibility where the university of the 20th century looked like a tree, the roots, the trunk, and then the branches. But in the 21st century, we would like to look at it differently and say, can it look like a web? The 21st university, 21st century university should look like a web, where we are saying knowledge flows sideways, yeah? Where insight moves between fields, not just up the chain. Point number two, authority must be shared because no single expert holds the whole answer. And the third point is value emerges at the edges. That is, the breakthroughs happen where fields touch. That is the 21st century view of the university vis-a-vis research becoming a network. And that's where we come in because we belong to different institutions here, and we are envisaging a 21st century university. That means we are moving from individual genius to collective intelligence, because yesterday the lone genius was a single mind in a single room who worked on a single problem. But although brilliant, it was bounded. I think Newton, Einstein, Marie Curie, those are some of the lone geniuses. Whereas today, we have an orchestra, many minds, many disciplines, and many tools. So this gives us a composition, not a solo. So achievements, no individual could have authored. mRNA vaccines, human genome, the human genome sequencing, CERN, all these things have become possible because of the collective intelligence. So, what is it that the next researcher must become? Well, we see that a degree is no longer enough, and our Honorable President has always referred to that on many occasions. Three capabilities now define research-ready talent. The first one could be systems thinking, where we are seeking to see the whole, the whole, not just the part. And the second point would be the collaborative fluency, where we are using vocabulary that would be AI partnership, where we are working with the machine, not against it. The issue perhaps here, or the question about AI partnership could be how, the how part. That's where many of us are at. We are learning, and there's fear that in the future, what will I be like if I don't learn AI now? So yes, hence the move from generative to AGI. Systems thinking really is about the discipline of seeing how different parts behave together, not just how parts behave together in unison. So we need to zoom out where we see the larger system the problem lives in, the problem lives inside this larger system. Okay. Then we can trace feedback as well, where we are following the loops. What amplifies the problem? What dampens the problem? And then find leverage. Choose the small change that moves the whole. So, a specialist sees a part clearly. A systems thinker sees the part in motion. If this part shifts, what happens to the other parts? I think systems thinking in this way prepares the next, the researcher, the next researcher in a better way. But that's not the only one, systems thinking. We need to look at collaborative fluency. This collaboration would be the ability to listen, to translate, and build across the borders of expertise. The borders of expertise, that is the team, the research team. Yeah. Listen without translating yet, sit inside another field's vocabulary, understand, because more often than not, we dismiss simply because we didn't understand. Translate without dilution. Keep the rigor when you breach, and build a shared object, a model, a map, a database that all sides can edit. They can edit. That is the collaborative fluency. I remember where, in other webinars where we're looking at what are the barriers to collaboration. And I think these aspects really speak to those barriers where we tend to be dismissive, where we tend to look at the problem and how to solve it in our own views only, and we still continue in working in silos, which is why we need to move towards the collaborative fluency. And then comes the AI part, the AI partnership, which the next researcher Speaker after speaker refers to AI is not the next instrument in the lab. It is the next colleague at the table. That's why we seem to be under so much pressure here, because one feels feels that element of inadequacy. Why inadequacy? Because perhaps we have not given ourselves time to learn. Perhaps we have not had time to learn. Perhaps because of the fear, of being left out. Yeah. So let's stop asking, will AI replace researchers? Instead, ask, what can a researcher with AI do that neither could do alone? So, which brings pressure on us once again to say we must be able to decide as researchers what is worth asking. Only the machine accelerates the asking. So that goes to the prompt engineering, the different tools that we saw, the Google AI Studio, the Notebook LM, the Cloud, all those are tools out there, but do we know or do we understand how we can use them? Because that is a big skill for the next researcher, where the AI is the next colleague at the table. Okay, so what capability will define the most effective researchers of the next decade? Perhaps decade would be too long, but okay, fine. For discussion purposes, let's say in the next 10 years, what capability will define the most effective researcher? Could it be curiosity? All researchers, maybe, they have curiosity. That's why we have a research problem. But well, could it be courage? Could it be the ability to code or care, or something we have not yet named? That puts us in a tight corner there, because we are trying to look into the future and to look at ourselves and say, okay, what skills should I have in order to remain relevant or effective in the next decade? That puts us under pressure. We have to learn. We have to learn, and especially AI, agentic AI, generative AI tools, and most of all, understand the limitations. So, in terms of universities, the future vision is that the institutions that will lead this century will be organized around questions, not departments. Because the universities that we inherited, they were organized by subject, faculty by department, budgets by discipline, promotion by single author outputs, and curriculum by inherited tradition. But then what we should strive for is a university that is organized by question. I'm using university here as the institution, but this could be scaled down to the academician, right? Who is trying to look at collaboration, who is trying to look at interdisciplinary, who is trying to, move away from silos. So in this case, we are looking at teams formed by problem, not by flow. Which flow? Funding for the gaps between these fields. Yeah, because they won't be covered by, the different fields. So these gaps, these areas would need funding, promotion also that rewards collaboration. I think this is more like a recommendation to institutions to look at their promotion policies. I read the other time the problem of using research output as the only criterion becomes very, very contentious. So perhaps promotion that rewards collaboration could be something to consider if it's not being considered already. And also in terms of curriculum, that begins with the world, meaning therefore that we are going back to society to look at how this curriculum addresses the needs of the society, the needs of common people. Because if there's that disconnect, then our graduates will always not find employment. They are not able to use their skills to solve problems and earn, say, a decent living. So, from institutions to ecosystems, that is still the future vision. So, tomorrow's research will not live inside one building. It will live in a connected ecosystem of universities, industry, governments, civil society, and AI machines. That is unfortunately or fortunately how this might pan out. Universities will cultivate the long, slow work of foundational knowledge. Yes, we need the foundational knowledge. We need the understanding of physics. We need mathematics. We need biochemistry. We need, yeah. But then industry needs to scale the discoveries into products, infrastructure, and jobs. You see the ecosystem. Government sets the rules, protecting the public good, funding the moonshots, you know. These are your grants, applications, it's a moonshot, your project, but, well, it must be funded. Civil society must keep research honest, accountable, and human-centered, where the new co-author, fast, tireless, and bounded by us, will be the AI machines. That builds in, I think it has ethics built in already. So yes, ecosystems being the fact that universities form or research teams form will live inside different buildings, different institutions, hence the use of the term ecosystem. So let's look at a morning in 2035, a morning 9 years from today, where at 7:15, a young researcher in Mumbai opens a problem brief. It's not from a department, it's from a city, Lagos, Nigeria, asking how to keep cooling affordable. That is the brief. At 9:30 Indian Standard Time, she joins a live team, material scientist in Berlin, a behavioral economist in Sao Paulo, and an AI model that has read every paper on the topic. I am saying this, mentioning these cities, but this can be condensed. It can be institutions within the same geography, for example, the same locality. And by Friday, a working prototype is reviewed by community elders in Lagos. No paper has been published yet. So but the work has already begun to matter. So you see where we have government setting the rules, see where we have the universities doing the foundational work, you see where society, curriculum must go to society. And there is no paper that has been published yet, but the work has already begun to matter because the working prototype is reviewed by community elders in their locality. So that's where we are saying that this is not science fiction. It is architecture that is already being built, and it's slowly but taking shape. And this is mainly aided by technology. It is being aided by technology. It is aided by AI models. That's why we keep pushing to say we need to learn AI and learn AI ethics. So one question for us to carry home, I would like to ask, if universities began today, would departments still exist? You may answer yes or no. Either way, you have just done multidisciplinary thinking, because you are really looking at starting universities today, and you are still thinking about having departments. What do you think would be your reasoning? Go back to the traditional way. So 100%. What would you like to change? If there are any departments, how would you like them to be structured? That's the multidisciplinary thinking that I was hoping that maybe you could engage in. So before next week, Monday morning, you can do 3 small revolutions. Kind request. 3 actions that each one of us can take. You don't need anybody's permission. Yeah? You can have 1 coffee outside your field. How? Yes, 1 coffee. Starbucks, maybe, I don't know what coffee shops you have in your locality, but invite a researcher whose vocabulary you do not yet share. Ask 1 question. Listen longer than you speak. Just 1 researcher, from a different field. Ask a single question over coffee and listen. You will learn a lot. Or you could reframe 1 project as a question, not a method, by, say, rewriting the title of 1 paper or proposal, just the title. Begin with the words problem, not your toolkit. And then, of course, for others within our midst, where you mentor someone unlike you, you can take a single early career researcher from another discipline under your wing for 1 year. Build the network you wish existed. Mentoring someone, you don't know how much isolation the people are find themselves in research. But mentoring or offering to mentor someone, no matter on a small scale, to be with them would make us understand their problem, their research, their field. And that would be, in a way, thinking systems. With that, in closing, I would say we inherited systems that were designed for a simpler world. But today's challenges, they refuse to be categorized. Tomorrow's breakthroughs emerge when we connect ideas, disciplines, and people. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention. Thank you for your patience. I hope I have really increased the motivation for academic research, for collaborative partnerships, and ethical use of um, AI tools. I thank you very much.